Hi, and welcome to the Hotline, your online hotline direct line to the women-only attorneys at Hofheimer Family Law. I'm glad that you're here. My name is Katie Carter, and I'm an attorney at Hofheimer Family Law, a Virginia-based family law firm that represents women exclusively in divorce, custody, and support cases. I'm here today with Caitlin Walters, who practices as an attorney in our firm and is also a licensed guardian ad litem. Thanks for joining me today, Caitlin.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're here today to talk a little bit more about guardian ad litems, and who better than a guardian ad litem? Can you tell me a little bit more about guardians ad litem in custody cases and what they/you do in them?
Yes. So a guardian ad litem, or a GAL, is an attorney who is appointed in custody cases to represent the children's best interests. So they are not your lawyer. They are not dad's lawyer. Don't get me on all the specifics of it. Technically, they're not the kid's lawyer either, although that's how you will hear people describe it a lot of times. But their role and their job, or our job when we are appointed as GALs in a custody case, is to do a thorough investigation into the family. So we're going to talk to mom, we're going to talk to dad, we're going to talk to the kids in an age appropriate way, talk to teachers, coaches, anybody that has information that's relevant to helping the court determine what is in the best interest of the children. So the best interest of the children, it is a list of factors that the court looks at when determining custody and visitation. So the GAL's job is to help investigate a little bit more thoroughly into those factors, and then make a recommendation to the judge of what they think, based on their investigation, would be in the children's best interest as far as a custody and visitation arrangement.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I
in a nutshell, that's what a
yeah,
GAL does.
I mean, it's a lot. It's a tall
Yes.
order, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you make it sound like it's such an easy thing, but I imagine, I mean, I haven't done any guardian ad litem work myself, but I imagine there's a lot that goes into making those recommendations to the court.
Yes, yeah, especially, well, there should be a lot that goes into making that recommendation
True.
to a court. We have all dealt with GALs who maybe didn't give it the amount of thoroughness we would have desired, but it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time. When I would do GAL work, my first step would be to meet with the mom, whether it was a phone call or an in-office meeting, just to get, well, no, let me back that up. First step actually is I give a written questionnaire to each of the parties, because I want, before I have you in my office or I'm in your home, I want to get an idea of kind of what the issues are, what's going on in the case. So those written questionnaires are sent, again, both to mom and dad. Most GALs will do that. They don't have to, but most do. That written questionnaire then, like I said, is going to give me the first impression of the case. So I look at those questionnaires answers, then I'm going to schedule a meeting to meet with you, a meeting to meet with dad. I'm probably going to do some home visits. I may go visit the kids at school, get on the phone with doctors, teachers, all those types of things. So it is a lot of work that goes into doing that investigation, which makes the GAL incredibly important to the judge, because the judge doesn't have the ability to do that. The judge doesn't get the opportunity to do as thorough of an investigation, because we're on a time limit. We're on a time crunch. We maybe sometimes have 4 hours for a custody trial. If we're lucky, we get a day. Maybe sometimes we get more than one day, but the
But that's a
judge gets
lot. That's
the judge gets
unusual.
a very limited picture of what the situation is. And so the GAL having the ability to do that more thorough investigation makes them really, the judges rely really heavily on what the GAL recommends when it comes to what arrangement is going to be appropriate.
So it's kind of loaded. So you're gonna want to, I imagine, go into these conversations with a guardian ad litem, in full awareness of that. And I think
Yes.
that speaks a lot to the strategy in your case. What advice would you give, Caitlin, to a woman who's recently had a guardian ad litem appointed in her case?
The first piece of advice I would give is talk to an attorney who's representing you to get
Right.
fact specific things of how to deal with that GAL. But the first thing to keep in mind is the GAL is not there to be your friend. They are not there to be dad's friend. In fact, when I when I did GAL work more heavily, I tended to see it as a win if both parents hated me, because that probably meant I was doing my job. That probably meant that they were both getting that I'm not there to be your friend. I'm not there to be your sounding board, nor am I there to be your attorney. I'm not there to give you advice. I'm not there to help you. I'm there to try to help come up with the resolution for your kids. So keeping that in mind, that this GAL, while they are incredibly important, they are not there to be your friend. And so, they're going to push your buttons and you're going to feel judged. And the reality is, because we are making a judgment, we're making a recommendation to the court of what's in your children's best interest. And so you are going to feel like you're being judged by this person. So keeping that in mind in your interactions with the GAL, keeping in mind that whatever you tell the GAL is not protected by attorney-client privilege. So anything you say to the GAL can be shared to dad, can be shared to dad's attorney, can be shared to the court. And so you just, again, want to keep that in mind. You want to be open and honest, but you don't want to spill your guts to the GAL because that could just be giving them maybe more information than they need. Also being aware just of how you speak about your case and about your kids to the GAL. So anytime that I had somebody who would fill out a questionnaire, would talk to me and say, my kids this and my kids that, that was always a little bit of a red flag to me because it's not your kids, it's singular,
Our
it's
kids
your
or
kids
the kids.
together. Yeah, it's our children, or refer to them by their name. Like they have names, you can call them by their name, it's okay. But anytime there was that my children, my kids, my the focus of a custody case is not what's good for mom, it's not what's good for dad, it is what is best for the children. So the more that you say my when you're talking to the GAL or to the judge in your case, my number one impression is going to be that you see these children as your property, not as something that you're sharing with dad, and that's usually problematic. And two, that you're more concerned about what's best for you and not really what's best for your kids. So again, you may not mean that by saying it. You know, I say my son when I'm talking about my son, or my daughter if I'm talking about my daughter, but I know that my spouse shares, you know, those kids equally. And so it's not always something that you're intentionally doing. It may just be kind of what you're saying, but just being aware of that, because first impressions are everything. And, you know, you just want to know kind of what vibe you're putting off to the GAL as far as how you are as a mom and how you are as a co-parent with the other side.
I mean, what you say and how you say it is always going to be important, right? I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're, talking to the cashier at the grocery store, you're talking to the guardian ad litem in your case. You're going to want to choose your words in a way that, makes you come across as approachable and respectful and,
Yes.
and gives people good feelings about you. And I think a lot of that especially in the guardian ad litem situation, comes down to just not using it as an opportunity to talk badly about dad. I
Yes.
mean, there's probably no question that he has done some bad things to lead up to this point, and that you need to talk about it, and you probably should talk about it, whether you talk about it with a therapist or with your girlfriends over a glass of wine. Those kinds of things are okay, but you aren't going to want to just unload on the guardian ad litem. It's important to remember that in most cases, it's going to be virtually impossible to get a guardian ad litem removed. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people who hate
Yeah.
their guardians ad litem and are convinced that the guardian hates them. And in most cases, like Caitlin said, that's probably not true. It's really just that the guardian ad litem is trying to do her job and not be superficial, to really get to the meat of what's going on. They have to be a little bit abrasive just to, get the real sense of what people are like.
Mm-hmm.
But you're probably not going to be able to get rid of them. And even if they do hate you, you're you're
Yeah.
going to be
You're
better
stuck.
effort. It's possible. Sometimes they do, but even if that happens, even if you feel like the guardian ad litem is totally against your case and doesn't see your arguments, doesn't see you, doesn't appreciate the work that you're doing, and is favoring dad for whatever reason, you're going to be better. Your time's going to be better spent trying to make a better impression in the future and trying to rebuild those bridges and show that you're taking the constructive criticism and making improvements to your approach as a co-parent, rather than trying to remove the guardian ad litem, which I think would have the opposite effect, which is that the guardian ad litem would stay and they'd actually hate you.
Then they would hate you. Yeah. Then we're really going to hate you
Yeah.
when you've done that. Cause now you just badmouth me to the judge that I'm in front of frequently. And so
I
now,
know. It's
now we
not.
may have an issue.
Ooh, danger.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that just scares me. But also you should remember too, I mean, custody, visitation, and child support are modifiable based on a material change in circumstances. So if your case is resolved today and then you make a petition to modify later and a guardian ad litem is appointed, it's probably going to be the same guardian ad litem.
Yep.
Almost certainly. They try to keep the continuity so that you already have someone who's familiar with the case, rather than bringing someone entirely new. I mean, you might get lucky. Maybe your GAL will move away or retire or be out on maternity leave when your case comes up next time. But I wouldn't count on it. So
Right.
I would definitely look at this, if I were a mother facing a custody case, as a relationship that kind of like a mother-in-law. Like, you want to tread carefully. You want to tread
That's
like
a
really
really
carefully,
great way to describe it,
like
actually.
really
That is a
carefully,
really
but
great
you
way.
also like secretly want to make a good impression,
Yes.
you know?
Yes, that's a
So
really great way to keep it.
you got to be really, really careful.
Mhm.
So, I mean, a lot of a custody case comes down to strategy, to thinking about this as a long game and seeing, not just where you are today, but how you plan to get where you want to be. And I mean, I think for most moms, where they want to be is in a place that their kids are thriving.
Yeah.
So, I know that's challenging, especially in the midst of a divorce and custody case. And guardian litems may seem like they're not there to make that easy, but I would definitely encourage you to, to work with an attorney representing you, so that you can make sure, so that you know as much as possible about this guardian litem and what their MO is, and make the best choices possible, so that you don't make some of these big mistakes that we see moms making.
Right.
Like, and it's tempting to be irritated if Caitlin walks up in your house and opens your fridge and goes
Yes, which
through
I
it.
would do. During
Yeah,
those home visits, I am there to
it
talk to
seems
you.
so crazy to me.
Yeah, yeah. It was a little bit. It took me a little bit to get comfortable with it, but I
Just
would. When I do a
open
home
that
visit,
fridge.
I'm looking everywhere because I want to see what type of environment these children are going to be in when they're with you. And so some of that is going to be me having a conversation with you. Some of that is going to be me going into your kitchen, opening your cabinets, going into all of the rooms, even if it's a room you tell me the kids, don't ever go into. Well, okay, then that's even going to
Is
pique
that
my
where
interest
you
more.
keep
I want
the
to know why.
guns?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why can't they go in that room? I need to know. So I get real
Right.
nosy. I get real personal in these types of cases. And it is, though, it comes from a place. And I really do truly think for most GALs who do this work, because it is incredibly time consuming. I'm gonna be honest with you, it doesn't pay that well when you're, especially when you do it through the juvenile court.
Nights and
And so,
weekends.
yeah, it was. Because especially, when I go into cases where we're doing maybe a modification of custody, and so a custody schedule has been established, and the parent that I'm going to do the home visit with only has the kids every other weekend. Well, then for me to see the kids with that parent, I need to do it on the weekend because
Yeah,
that's
that
when he has the
opposite
kids.
weekend.
Or yeah, or hey, my kids are in school, so they're only home if you want to talk to them after school. And I can do visits at school, and a lot of times will, when, especially if the kids are older. But when I want to see a little bit of that interaction between the parent and the children, I need the kids obviously to be there. And so that's a lot of nights. And so because of how time consuming and off hours time consuming that job is, most GILs really are coming from a place of wanting to be helpful and wanting to make sure that the kids are protected and that the
Yeah.
children's best interest is made clear to the court. So again, even though we joke about how we're nosy and you're going to hate us and we love it when you hate us and those types of things, I really do think most GALs that I encounter, even the GALs who maybe aren't siding with my client, are really trying to do it from a place of caring about kids and wanting to help the courts make as good of decisions as we can, because custody cases are hard. They're just, they
Yeah.
obviously are hard for the parents going through it, but even for attorneys and GALs and the judges, like there's just so much that
Mhm.
comes into when we're dealing with kids, that we want to put as many things in place as possible to make sure that we get it as right as we can. And a
Yeah.
GAL is a really good tool for that, for judges, because of how in depth they can get with their investigation and how much
Yeah.
information they can gather in the time that they're given. So I
Yeah.
do think that generally, but I mean, it's GALs can be a really big help to cases and they can be a real big headache. But as Katie said,
Or both.
focus. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Depending on the day. But, but focusing more on making sure that you're doing everything you can to at least get along as well as possible with the GAL, and then focusing on getting those facts that you need to still present your case to the court, because the GAL's recommendation is just a recommendation. The court does not have to follow it. The court still gets to hear and has to hear evidence from both sides. And
Right.
so, you want to make sure, I think that's where a lot more of your energy and focus should go to be productive, is okay, this is what the GAL says is a problem. I think the GAL is wrong, or they've got this piece of information incorrect, or I don't agree with their assessment of them. Rather than getting hyper focused on that, have a conversation with an attorney to say, how do we combat that? How can I tell the court, I get the GAL is saying this and I respect the GAL as a person making this recommendation, but really for my kids, that's not what's best. And here's why. So kind of having that focus, shift can be helpful. But yeah, GALs are very important and very relied upon by the courts, and they're going to
Yeah.
get in your business. I mean, that's just what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you said it best. Like, they're not necessarily perfect people. The judge isn't necessarily a perfect person, and it's not necessarily a perfect system. But at the
Right.
end of the day, I do honestly believe that the judges, the attorneys, the guardians ad litem, all, the custody evaluators, the people involved in this system are doing the best they can to try and see good outcomes for children. And
Hmm.
I know that they don't always get it right. And it may be that you feel very strongly that in your case that's what's happening, and I think that's a case where it's especially important to make sure that you have an attorney on your side trying to advocate for you, and that you also keep in mind that it's not over until the children are um, out of the system, until they turn
Hmm.
18 and they're no longer minors. So everything can be modified, everything can change. Things might be wrong today, but you want to make sure that you're making the best strategy based decisions as your case moves forward. Do you have
Absolutely.
do you have anything else you wanted to add, Caitlin?
Um, I don't think so. I think
Okay.
again, just remembering that every interaction that you're going to have with the GAL is going to be really important.
Yeah.
I have a lot of moms who come in, and even if they don't end up hiring me to represent them, but they'll come in with their questionnaire and kind of what their answers are to get my
Hmm.
input
Yeah,
on,
that's helpful.
yeah, that like you may not have meant it this way, but this is kind of how it comes across from a third party viewing it. Because
Hmm.
I do that all the time, even and Katie can attest to this because a lot of
Yeah.
times I'm reaching out to her. I'm saying, hey, can you just read this and tell me if it makes sense? Because I know what I'm trying to say. I know what I'm trying to communicate.
Yeah.
But when
On a
you look
scale
at a
of
third
1 to 10,
party,
how passive aggressive do I
yeah.
sound?
Yeah, Katie keeps me in check. That's a lot of what her job is here at Hofheimer, is being an
Is it-
attorney and keeping me under control.
I'm
But
happy to proofread.
yes, yes, and she does a great job. But it is that sometimes she'll come back and say, "This is not clear to me. Like, this is maybe what I think you're trying to say," and I'm like, "Oh no, that's not what I mean." But I can see
Hmm.
now that you've pointed that out, that that's how that could be taken. So
Yeah.
having, getting somebody to look those over, keeping in mind in every interaction that you have with them what their job is, which is to represent the children's best interest, and then getting that strategy together with somebody who's there to help advocate for you, to help navigate that relationship with the GAL.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Caitlin. I think that
You're
was
welcome.
really very helpful. I mean, I've worked with lots of women, in custody cases as they're getting ready to work with a guardian ad litem, but I've never worked on the other side actually as a guardian ad litem. So it's definitely really helpful to have that perspective. I think helpful for moms getting ready to go through the process. Hopefully that your guardian ad litem is your friend, not your foe, but your friend is like kind of a challenging word anyway.
Right.
But you're definitely going to want to tread carefully and make good decisions, and hopefully work with your own independent lawyer who can kind of help coach you through some of the trickier parts of this.
Yeah.
But as always, I want to encourage everyone to visit our website at www.hoflaw.com. That's HOFLAW. There's lots more in-depth resources, including 4 free books, free reports, and information about our upcoming seminars. So I hope you'll check it out. Thanks again, Caitlin, and thanks to everyone else for tuning in.